two top-tier FNM members facing off on the campaign trail, the country's credit rating in jeopardy, and Renew Bahamas tackling hazardous medical waste as well as job cutbacks at the New Providence landfill. Find out about these stories and others. I'm your host, Nico Scavella, and this is the Tribune's Top 5. On the eve of the country's 43rd anniversary of independence, Prime Minister Perry Christie called on Bahamians to reflect on the country's accomplishments and focus on ways to move the Bahamas forward. Mr. Christie, in an Independence Day message on Friday, said Bahamians ought to move forward in confidence to embrace the challenge of bettering the country, as he charged that while Bahamians have a lot to be proud of, they should pause at this milestone to set their sights on new horizons. He said, and I quote, "When one reflects on where we were in 1973 and where we are today in these areas of national endeavor, even the most cynical and jaded of critics must concede how far we have come in such a remarkably short time." He went on to say, and I quote, "I hope therefore that we will redouble our personal commitment as citizens of this beloved nation of ours so that next year this time we can all look back and see where we made a positive difference in the quality of life of our families, our neighborhoods, and our nation. If we can each do that, just think how much better we can become as a people and as a nation. Let us move in confidence to embrace that challenge even as we rise in unity to meet the myriad of other challenges that continue to face us as a people, especially in the areas of economic uplift and respect for law and order. Yes, we have so much to be proud of, so much to be thankful for, but there is still so much unfinished work that lies before us. Let's band together, therefore, to get the job done, dedicating our best efforts to the glory of God and the continued betterment of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas." End quote. Approximately 40 staff members have been made redundant at Renew Bahamas since the start of June, according to the company's new Chief Executive Officer, Michael Cox. The revelation came as the company admitted this week that Renew Bahamas has been forced to make some cutbacks as it continues to negotiate with the government on reestablishing the parameters of its management contract for the New Providence landfill. As part of those cutbacks, Mr. Cox also confirmed that long-standing CEO and President Gerhard Bukes has stepped down from his position with the company. His comments came after several disgruntled Renew Bahamas employees contacted the Tribune claiming they were owed 3 weeks' pay and were going to work on pins and needles each day. News of the redundancies also came as Environment and Housing Minister Kenford Dorset said his ministry is addressing the appearance of hazardous medical waste found at the New Providence landfill. Mr. Dorset's statement followed a Nassau Guardian report that said an investigation was being made by Renew Bahamas officials to find out how biohazardous waste, said to originate from the Princess Margaret Hospital, made it to the landfill site. The material, according to the report, was said to include AIDS and hepatitis waste that was not incinerated before it was brought to the site. In light of the aforementioned, Democratic National Alliance leader Granville McCartney castigated the Christie administration over Renew Bahamas as he demanded transparency regarding the landfill management company, saying it came to the country under very suspicious circumstances. Mr. McCartney said the aforementioned issues drew questions over the terms and conditions of Renew's contract as he chided the government for being reluctant to explain the specifics of the agreement with Renew Bahamas. Tourism Minister Obi Wilshcombe this week said he expects the Progressive Liberal Party to win the next election, asserting that the party is in the best position it's ever been in. His comments to the Tribune came as he downplayed fears from Tall Pines MP Leslie Miller that a failure to jumpstart Bahar Mar could hurt the Christie administration's chances at the polls next year. However, the West Grand Bahama and Bimini MP conceded that the Christie administration must continue to do its work and do more to connect with its base and the wider voting public. On the issue of Bahar Mar, Mr. Wilshcombe shot down the line of thinking that a failure to open the beleaguered Cable Beach Resort would automatically translate to a condemnation of the Christie administration, as he submitted that there are, quote, "many issues that will determine whether you win or whether you lose," end quote. Last Thursday, Mr. Miller implored senior PLP members to do all they can to jumpstart the stalled Bahar Mar project, suggesting that without it, the party could be entering the 2017 general election as, quote, "lame ducks." Characterizing the Bahar Mar debacle as a, quote, "rope that might end it all for us," end quote, Mr. Miller told the Tribune that, quote, "every negative factor known to this country has merged into one zenith," end quote, and as a result, the PLP has to prove to voters that it has the necessary plans to, quote, "right the ship." In response, Mr. Wilshcombe said, and I quote, "without question, people would look at it and put it in that category. We're aware of that, and I think Mr. Miller knows that without question, people would say immediately that represents failure. But in the true context of governance, no. The fact is, we've been governing and we've been doing and holding the country, doing what we have to do, coming from difficult situations, fighting our way through the criticisms, fighting through the ratings, fighting through everything to get our country back, and doing difficult things," end quote. Government officials this week said the Christie administration will meet with international ratings agencies in order to convince the firms not to downgrade the country's credit rating. Michael Alkidis, State Minister for Finance, told the Tribune that while Moody's seems to be leaning in one direction, the government will plead its case in hopes that the Wall Street ratings agency will see the government's positive future prospects for the economy. His comments came days after Moody's announced it was placing the country on review for a potential downgrade due to both its unexpected economic contraction and further deterioration in the government's fiscal position. He spoke to the Tribune hours before the government released a statement on the matter, which said the government is confident that the impending review will show that medium-term economic prospects for the country are good, pointing to the imminent construction, restart, and opening of Bahar Mar as a good growth prospect. Moody's pointed out last Friday that debt accumulation has continued to increase, with the government consistently failing to hit its budget projections and the adequacy and effectiveness of its policy responses to the Bahamas' problems. Moody's warned that any potential downgrade could be by one notch or more. The country currently has a Baa2 rating, 2 notches away from being cut to so-called junk status, a position where it will lose its existing investment grade status. Moody's announcement is more in line with Standard & Poor's, which presently has the Bahamas 1 notch above junk status. Despite the gloomy prospects, though, Mr. Alkidis said he believes the government can convince the agencies not to downgrade the credit rating. He said the issues the Bahamas is experiencing at the moment are not that different from what is happening around the world. He said despite the potential negative outcome, he does not believe this will give the government a black eye. The country has until August to convince Moody's otherwise and is also in the middle of the 624-month period set by Standard & Poor's to determine whether it will follow through on the greater than 1 in 3 chance of a Bahamas downgrade. 2 of the Free National Movement's top guns this week faced off on the campaign trail as both individuals seek to gain ground ahead of the party's national convention. FNM leader Dr. Hubert Minnis and Long Island MP Loretta Butler Turner this week held rallies at separate locations in New Providence but at similar times as they sought to convince supporters to vote for them in the upcoming convention. Dr. Minnis made a plea for party unity during a rally at Christie Park on Wednesday night, even as his sympathizers lambasted his political opponents in the upper ranks of the Free National Movement as, quote, betrayers. For some in the crowd of what the Tribune estimated to be close to 400, the event was a homecoming for a politician they find relatable and who they don't believe has been given a fair chance to lead the party without internal dissension. Dr. Minnis made only indirect references to the toll the division that has emerged in the FNM during his tenure as leader has had on him personally. Absent from his speech, however, were any cutting remarks about his rival, Mrs. Butler Turner, and the FNM officials who have been critical of his leadership. Such statements were instead made, often indirectly, by FNM Deputy Leader Peter Turnquest and the event's moderator, Bamboo Town MP Renwood Wells. Meanwhile, Mrs. Butler Turner, at a rally in Rawson Square, called herself and Senator Dr. Dwayne Sands the, quote, best team not only to lead the Free National Movement, but also to take the country out of the hands of the, quote, worst government the country has ever seen, end quote. Addressing a crowd of what the Tribune estimated to be 200 supporters in Rawson Square, Mrs. Butler Turner took the government to task on its many failed promises while outlining her plan for a new FNM and a new Bahamas. She was supported by several current FNM members of parliament as well as former cabinet ministers, including former FNM leader Tommy Turnquest, Central Grand Bahama MP Nico Grant, St. Anne's MP Hubert Chipman, former Deputy Prime Minister Frank Watson, former House Speaker Alvin Smith, former FNM Chairman Darren Cash, Senator Monique Gomez, former Senator Heather Hunt, former Senate President Lynn Holowesko, and former Garden Hills MP Renzel Roll, who all publicly endorse her as the, quote, woman to take the country to the next level, end quote. Want to get in on the discussion? Well, here's how you can. Just log on to our website, www.tribune242.com, like us on Facebook, Tribune News Network, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Tribune242, or send us a tweet at Tribune242.